Greetings! Just recently, Jews celebrated Tu B'Shvat, the 15th day of the 11th month, which has become a National Arbor Day. And here in Florida, of course, we have a lot of trees and a lot of water, too, fortunately. And it's a very nice place to live, Florida. You know, in the summer, you walk out of your house at 7:30 a.m. and break into a sweat. I may be exaggerating. But we do enjoy life here in Florida. But we are concerned, of course, here and all over the country for the future of the country. And, of course, we're concerned for the state of the world in general. Fortunately, if we have an understanding of the Bible and of Bible prophecy, we understand that ultimately things are going to work out for the best. Today I wanted to talk about geopolitics behind the scenes. We have to understand that we're not going to probably fully grasp what's going on in the world in terms of who's up and who's down and why, and the rise and fall of nations, because there is a missing dimension in our understanding. It isn't just a physical matter. God has given this world over to a spirit being who is hostile to him and to fallen angels who are hostile to God as well. So we have a satanic and demonic force that does influence world events. On the other hand, ultimately, God is in control. And God directs human events, world events. He has a prophetic plan in mind, and it's going to be fulfilled. What he has prophesied is going to happen, and he is ultimately in control. And he has guided and directed world events over the centuries. God is the Master Geopolitician. When the Apostle Paul, came to the citadel of civilization in his day, Athens, he said this to the Athenians, Acts 17:26, speaking about God. And he has made from one blood every nation. Let that sink in. And he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings. So God has directed the way this world has been settled. There's, of course, a lot of verses on that subject. You can read Genesis 11. But I want to also remind us that one reason for so much negativity in history is the fact that for a temporary period of time, we have a negative influence here on the earth. Now, that won't be here forever. When Jesus Christ returns, he's going to eliminate that influence. But I do want to go to Luke, the 4th chapter. So, and as I said, there's many scriptures I could be talking about today. This is a brief overview of this subject, geopolitics behind the scenes. That there is a spiritual dimension that directs world events. And in Luke 4, the devil is trying to tempt Jesus Christ here. Then in verse 4, Luke 4:5, then the devil takes him up on a high mountain, taking him up on a high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And the devil said to him, all this authority I will give you, and their glory, for this has been delivered to me, and I give it to whomever I wish. So God allows at times certain rulers to be there that's actually Satan has chosen. That can happen. Obviously, as I said, this is a matter behind the scenes. We don't always know what's happening behind the scenes. We just have to be aware that there are spirit forces at work. Now, Jesus didn't deny that he had that power, but of course Jesus resisted him. If you resist the devil, he'll flee from you. And so Jesus said, here's what the devil said to him. Therefore, if you will worship before me, all will be yours. Verse 8, and Jesus answered and said to him, get behind me, Satan, For it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. So you go back to Deuteronomy 6:13, Deuteronomy 10:20. You resist the devil and he'll flee from you. So, but there is this influence on the world. But as I said, God is ultimately in control. Ultimately, he will direct events, so things will work out really for the best for humanity. But in the meantime, of course, we have a world which is troubled. And, of course, the trouble has to do with sin, because sin is self-destructive behavior. And because we have too much sin in the world, we have, unfortunately, a lot of problems. But as I said, God is ultimately in charge. He directs events. And, for example, he wanted Israel to be a major power in ancient times, to be an example to other nations. So he directed events so that Israel would have at least that potential to be a tremendous positive influence on the world. And Moses spoke to the children of Israel before they entered the promised land. And in Deuteronomy 32, verse 8, let's go to the 7th verse. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, and he will show you, your elders, and they will tell you. When the Most High divided their inheritance to the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel. And I'll just read the next verse. For the Eternal's portion is his people. Jacob is the place of his inheritance. So God had a plan in mind. He wanted Israel to be a model nation, a blessing to the world, an example, and he directed world events so that could potentially take place. It was Israel's responsibility, of course, to carry through on that. Unfortunately, for much of the time of their history, they did not. Now, it's interesting what is said here, that he separated the sons of Adam. There's an implication there. It doesn't say the sons of Noah. It says the sons of Adam. So even prior to the great flood, God had directed human events in terms of separating the nations. So if you study archaeology, you'll see that pre-flood there were different languages. Just as God intervened after the flood to give people different languages, he did so also before the flood. And so that's why if you study archaeology, you'll see there's different languages also pre-flood. So you see that God is directing human events, and this is very important to be aware of. It's when you study the Bible, you see that in effect you have history written in advance. I mean, for example, just one example that really comes to mind, if you study end-time prophecy, you find that you need to have the Jews back in their land in some kind of organized fashion. And indeed, we do now have the modern state of Israel. It's really a miracle. How the fact that almost half the world's Jews now live there. It's become a regional power, and the biblical language of Hebrew is now a contemporary language, miraculously reborn and spoken. But these events, many people were looking forward to over the years, Bible scholars, because they read the prophecies and they believed them, and they have been coming to pass, in our generation right before our eyes. But I want to go to 1 Chronicles, the 18th chapter, and a really classic case of how events behind the scenes, spiritual events, have an influence on the way major world events are going to take place. And, we don't know. We're human. We're limited. We're limited to the senses. Here, these are spiritual matters, but at least we can be aware that is the reality, a missing dimension. When I was younger, I always wanted to have an explanation about why events took place. And, there are physical explanations for why things happen. But on the other hand, we have to realize we're never fully going to comprehend why things happen because there's a spiritual dimension involved. And on the other hand, too, we can be irresponsible in speculating on these things. We have to be careful. How we judge events. We have to have a certain humility when we take a look at events and try to evaluate them from a biblical point of view. Let's tremble before God's word and be respectful of it and realize our own limitations. not like Job's friends who thought, who came up with, when they saw Job was in trouble, they came up with quick answers that were not the correct answers. I want to go to 1 Chronicles 18, and here we're, 2 Chronicles 18, and here we're in the 9th century BC, and we're at the time when Ahab is ruling in the northern kingdom, and Jehoshaphat in the southern. Ahab is a wicked king. Jehoshaphat is a righteous king. And unfortunately, he gets too involved with Ahab. Now, he married a daughter of Ahab, but now he gets involved in a war with Ahab. I mean, together as an ally, because they're the same people. They're Israelites. We have the northern kingdom. We have the southern kingdom of Judah. And so we have, in effect, the Jewish nation in the south, and then we have their brethren, the northern tribes in the north, and they get together in an alliance and get involved in a war, which, Jehoshaphat shouldn't have done. But I'm in 2 Chronicles 18. I'm going to jump to verse 3. So Ahab, king of Israel, said to Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, "Will you go with me against Ramoth Gilead?" And he answered him, "I am as you are, and my people as your people. We will be with you in the war." Well, yes, they were ethnically the same, but unfortunately Ahab was a wicked king, and Jehoshaphat was a shomer mitzvot. He was a commandment keeper. He was a one who was a God-fearer, and not like Ahab. But he goes along with him here because, well, we're the same nation, same people. He's his father-in-law. Also, Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, "Please inquire for the word of the Eternal today." Then the king of Israel gathered the prophets together, 400 men, and said to them, "Shall we go to war against Ramoth Gilead, or shall I refrain?" So who does he go to? He goes to prophets, but they're not God's prophets. They're pagan prophets. They're what we call a seer in a sense. They're not true prophets. Then the king of Israel gathered the prophets together, 400 men, and said to them, "Shall we go to war against Ramoth Gilead, or shall I refrain?" So they said, "Go up, for God will deliver it into the king's hand." So they're giving him, somehow they felt inspired, and they got some kind of vibes, and they actually all of them agreed, do it. But Jehoshaphat said, "Is there still a prophet of the Eternal here that we require of him? Is there not a prophet of Yahweh, of the God of the people of Israel?" He still worshipped the one true God. So the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "There still is one man by whom we may inquire of the Eternal, but I hate him, because he never prophesies good concerning me, but always evil. He is Micaiah, the son of Imlah." And Jehoshaphat said, "Let not the king say such things." Don't be that way. Let's pay respects and listen to this prophet of Yahweh. And this was a side point of today's talk, but we understand how often God's prophets are not so popular. And we don't like the message, so we go after the messenger. That's been the case through history. God's prophets have often been persecuted because they're not telling people what they want to hear. And so anyway, here we have this situation with Ahab and Micaiah. Then the king of Israel called one of his officers and said, "Bring Micaiah, the son of Imlah, quickly." The king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, clothed in their robes, sat each on his throne, and they sat at a threshing floor at the entrance of the gate of Samaria, and all the prophets prophesied before them. What's interesting, one interesting point about this account is that you find it already in 2 Kings, the 22nd chapter. 1 Kings 22. You find it already in 1 Kings 22. So it's such an important section to be aware of that it's virtually word for word in two sections of the Bible. I'm reading it out of Chronicles. I'm going to go back though to the account in 1 Kings eventually. Now Zedekiah, I'm in verse 10 though of Chronicles 18. This is 2 Chronicles 18. Now Zedekiah, the son of Hananiah, had made horns of iron for himself, and it said, "Thus says the Eternal." He even thinks he's quoting God, which we know you have to be very careful about that. maybe I shouldn't. Well, all right, I'm going to force myself to say this. I hear people often saying, God said this to me. What do they mean by that? I wonder. But I'll continue on. Now Zedekiah the son of Hananiah had made horns of iron for himself and said, Thus says the Eternal, with these you shall gore the Syrians until they are destroyed. And all the prophets prophesied so, saying, Go up to Ramoth Gilead and prosper, for the Eternal will deliver it into the king's hand. So they even, in effect, pretended, or what's the right word, assumed to speak for the God of Israel when they, were really not true prophets of Israel. They had mingled the religion of Israel with pagan practices. That in the northern kingdom there was a calf, it was a bull that was worshipped in the Dan, and another one in Bethel. And they had moved the Feast of Tabernacles in the 8th day 1 month ahead, and so forth, or to the 8th month. They were messing things up. Anyway, verse 12. Then the message, and not going to Jerusalem anymore, as they were supposed to have. They were supposed to continue to go to Jerusalem and utilize the Holy Temple. It's possible to have two separate nations and the same religion. That's true today. There are many nations that are Catholic nations, and so their religion is centered in the Vatican, even though they're different countries. There are many Muslim countries, and people in those countries go to Mecca. They're not Saudi Arabia, Saudis, they're Moroccans, Algerians, Indonesians, whatever they are. So it's possible to have different countries, but the same religion. But right away, the northern kingdom, Jeroboam I, began to push Israel away from the complete religion of the Bible. So anyway, in verse 12, then the messenger who had gone to call Micaiah spoke to him, saying, Now listen, the words of the prophets with one accord. Encourage the king. Therefore, please let your word be like the word of one of them, and speak encouragement. And Micaiah said, As the Eternal lives, whatever my God says, that I will speak. This is our responsibility as teachers, to teach the truth. Right now, I'm still able to do it in this country, and I hope and pray that I'll be able to continue to do it. And obviously, I'm implying by this talk that prayer does make a difference, because there are spiritual forces at work influencing world events. This means that our prayers will make a difference. Now, we are not, if you believe firmly that you have been called out to be a part of God's church, and will be in that first resurrection to be a king and priest in God's kingdom, then we're not trying to run the world now. But we can pray and should about events. So anyway, now I'm going to continue on. Then he came to the king, and the king said to him, Micaiah, shall we go to war against Ramoth Gilead, or shall I refrain? And he said, Go and prosper, and they shall be delivered into your hand. Very ironically, sarcastically, where he didn't sound sincere. He just repeated the same old, party line, or, what's the word I'm thinking of? There's another word for that now. Not in speak, but there's a term whenever what everybody is supposed to be saying. It hasn't come to me just right at the moment. Maybe it'll come to me eventually, but there's a certain talk that everybody's supposed to be going along with, so he went along with it, and of course the king realized that he wasn't being sincere. So the king said to him in verse 15, How many times shall I make you swear that you tell me nothing but the truth in the name of the Lord? Well, he's the one that said, I hate what he says. This is so human, though. He realizes that the man isn't telling him the truth, and he realizes he's not going to like what he wants to hear. But nevertheless, he says, okay, let me hear what you really want to say. And of course, Jehoshaphat was there too, and he really did care very much to hear what Micaiah was going to say. Oh, talking points. That's the term I'm looking for. The term talking points. So he gave him the talking points at first. Then he told him the truth. Verse 16, Then he said, I saw all Israel scattered on the mountains as sheep that have no shepherd. And the Eternal said, These have no master. Let each return to his house in peace. Oh, no. What a result. And the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, did I not tell you he would not prophesy good concerning me, but evil? Then Micaiah said, therefore hear the word of the Eternal. Now here is where where the curtain is lifted, and we see what's going on behind the scenes. And this is rare, but this is very interesting and worthwhile. And as I said, you find two accounts. You find this account also in 1 Kings. Then Micaiah said, therefore hear the word of the Eternal. I saw the Eternal sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing on his right hand and on his left. And the Eternal said, who will persuade Ahab, king of Israel, to go up, that he may fall at Ramoth Gilead? So one spoke in this manner, another spoke in that manner. Then a spirit came forward and stood before the Eternal and said, I will persuade him. The Eternal said to him, in what way? Now this is his account of the understanding given to him. So it's in anthropomorphic terms. So I'm not saying that this is an actual tape recording or photograph, video of what went on, but this is the understanding that he's being given. So he said, I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of his prophets. And the Eternal said, you shall persuade him and also prevail. Go out and do so. So as I said, there are negative spirits here, and one evidently came before God and was willing to perform this function. And it's kind of like a wild beast that's caged, and then God allows the wild beast to go out and do harm. God has allowed it because Ahab was a sinful person. Israel was a sinful nation. So he can restrain these beings, or he can turn them loose. In this case, he turned one of them loose. Therefore, look, the Eternal has put a lying spirit in the mouth of these prophets of yours, and the Eternal has declared disaster against you. Now, unfortunately, this is the way the world often is. Nations are predatory. The world is like a jungle. I remember a senator from the state of Texas, Phil Graham, and he was, I believe, from East Texas, and we were living there at the time, and at a period of time, and we went to Tyler, Texas for the 4th of July, and a helicopter lands, and Phil Graham, the senator, comes out, Phil Graham, and he comes out to speak to this huge crowd in a stadium in Tyler, celebrating the 4th of July, and he makes this comment, and he says, I'm looking forward to the time when the lion sits down next to the lamb, but I want the United States to be the lion. That was his attitude. The point is that nations act as like wild beasts with each other. And in fact, many nations are symbolized by some kind of a predatory animal. And in the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter of Daniel pictures the world empires as a great statue, as a great man, a metallic figure. This is Nebuchadnezzar's view. But then Daniel gets a vision in the 7th chapter where the empires of the world are pictured as predatory animals, which is you might say, a divine perspective. And in Daniel 4, we're told that God can allow even somebody you would think never ought to be running a country to run a country. In Daniel 4 and verse 17, God is ultimately in control. And so here's a vision, a dream that Nebuchadnezzar has. Daniel interprets it, and in Daniel 4:17, then Daniel answered and said to the king, speaking to Nebuchadnezzar, am I in 4:17? No, I'm in 5. I'm sorry, in the 5th chapter. Let's go back one chapter. Here we go. This decision is by the decree of the watchers, and the sentence by the word of the Holy One. So as we have, of course, God using angels to carry out his will, in order that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, gives it to whomever he will. Okay, that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, gives it to whomever he will, and sets over it the lowest of men. So God can take somebody who, you wouldn't think, how did that person ever wind up rising to power, and running a country? But God can direct such things as that. So anyway, getting back to 1 Chronicles 18, to summarize the account, they want to persecute Micaiah for what he said. I can read a little bit further. Am I in did I read verse 20? No, I didn't get to 22. Let's go. This is 1 Chronicles 18:22. Therefore, look, the Eternal has put a lying spirit in the mouth of these prophets of yours, and the Eternal has declared disaster against you. Then Zedekiah the son of Hananiah went near and struck Micaiah on the cheek and said, which way did the Spirit from the Eternal go for me to speak to you? What arrogance, what a foolish thing to say and do. And Micaiah said, indeed, you shall see on that day when you go into an inner chamber to hide. So what happened was they made a prisoner out of Micaiah, and, Micaiah said that in verse 27, but Micaiah said, if you ever return in peace, the Eternal has not spoken by me. And he said, take heed, all you people. So he imprisoned Micaiah, and the idea was, if I come back, I guess then I'll let you out. Well, he didn't come back alive. I'm not sure what happened to Micaiah. Hopefully, presumably, he did finally get out of the prison because the king died. But in any case, the king did die in battle after all, even though you'd think that Jehoshaphat should have been the one to die. If you keep reading the account, it looks as though Jehoshaphat's going to be killed, but then finally they kill Ahab, even though he did have a little sense that maybe he ought to take into account what Micaiah had to say. So he thought he could protect himself by not dressing up as a king, so people wouldn't know who he was. But so he was just killed by accident, like any other soldier in a battle. So being in a disguise didn't help him. Anyway, he wound up being killed, losing his life, and so the battle was lost. I'm going to go to verse 34. The battle increased that day, and the king of Israel propped himself up in his chariot against facing the Syrians until evening, and about the time of sunset he died. And then it goes on to say, then Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, returned safely to his house in Jerusalem. If you read the account, God miraculously intervened to save Jehoshaphat, but allowed Ahab to be killed. And so we see that these events are being influenced by spirit forces. God had made a decision because of the sinfulness of Ahab and the sinfulness of his nation. He had made a decision. On the other hand, even though Jehoshaphat was unwise to get involved, God spared him, and he returned home. He was criticized by a prophet at home for doing that, but nevertheless, God spared him, and he continued to rule in the south. Now, I did want to go to 1 Kings, to the account there, that even in the death of Ahab, various prophecies were being fulfilled because of some of the wicked things Ahab had done. So I'm going to go to 1 Kings 22 to the end of the chapter there. So we're still okay. So I want to pick it up where there's the battle. Okay, so we're now in verse around 33 or so. Let's go to verse 33. And it happened when the captains of the chariots saw that it was not the king of Israel, when they saw that Jehoshaphat was not the king of Israel, that they turned back from pursuing him. So he came pretty close to dying. God intervened to save him, and in effect, he was being told, watch out who you associate with, and that's something we need to keep in mind. Not that we have to be antisocial and hermits, but we have to be careful about getting very deeply involved in people who obviously are on the wrong track. You want to be careful about your associations. The Bible warns about that. As I said, we're not antisocial, we're not hermits, we're not snobs, but at the same time, we don't get really deeply involved in people if they're criminals or very sinful people, as Ahab was. Anyway, so now now I'm reading in verse 34. Now a certain man drew a bow at random and struck at random, but of course God is directing events here. Now a certain man drew a bow at random and struck the king of Israel between the joints of his armor. So he said to the driver of his chariot, "Turn around and take me out of the battle, for I am wounded." The battle increased that day, as I read earlier in Chronicles, increased that day, and the king was propped up in his chariot, facing the Syrians, and died at evening. The blood ran out from the wound onto the floor of the chariot. Verse 36, then as the sun was going down, a shout went out through the army, saying, every man to his city, and every man to his own country. We've lost, let's get out of here. So the king died, and was brought to Samaria, and they buried the king in Samaria, and prophecies were being fulfilled by bringing him back there, and by the way where he was buried, and the whole situation. I'll read another verse or two here. Well, I'll read verse 38. One more is necessary. Then someone washed the chariot at a pool in Samaria, and the dogs licked up his blood while the harlots bathed. And these were fulfillments of prophecies earlier in this book of Kings. So it was a very ignominious death. Dogs are licking his blood, and they're washing his chariot in a pool where prostitutes are bathing. So, it's an ignominious death, and it was prophesied. These aspects were prophesied ahead of time. Then someone washed the chariot in a pool at Samaria, and dogs licked up his blood while the harlots bathed, according to the word of the Eternal, which he had spoken. So God is in control, and when he gives a prophecy, he fulfills it. This is, of course, one of the indications that there really is a personal God, that theism is correct, that there is a God who intervenes in human events, who is in control, and who inspired the Bible. For example, in Isaiah 46, I want to go to verse 8. Let's go to the 9th verse. Isaiah 46:9. Remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me. Now, one of the unique things about God is he can tell you what's going to happen in advance and make sure that it happens. He's in control, and he's above time, he's above space. He's omniscient, he's omnipotent, he's omnipresent, he's omnibeneficent, and of course he's eternal. Verse 10, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. So keep in mind that we're not going to have a full understanding of world events. There isn't just some key to unlock everything, because there are spirit forces at work, and we're very limited in our understanding. But we do have Bible prophecy, so we do have the outline of where history is going. And the good news is that we know where it's going, and it's going ultimately in the direction of peace, prosperity, true freedom, the rule of Jesus Christ and the saints. In Revelation 11, verse 15, we see, then the seventh angel sounded, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ. The kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. And he shall reign forever and ever. So I've given you a brief overview biblically of geopolitics behind the scenes. All the best to you and yours.